Here we explore the human experience through the mind, the body, and the soul. Mind Lounge is not about answers. It's about insight. Settle in. Open your mind. Let the conversation begin.
Imagine for a second that you are a civil engineer.
Okay.
You're tasked with building a bridge, right? It needs to support rush hour traffic for an entire city. So you check the wind speeds, you calculate the load-bearing capacity of the steel, you account for thermal expansion.
All the standard stuff.
All the standard stuff. But right at the beginning, in the very first spreadsheet, you make a typo. A simple calculation error. Maybe you misplaced a decimal, or you, grabbed the wrong variable for the stress test.
Right.
Because of that one tiny mistake, the bridge isn't actually strong enough to hold the cars it's built for. It looks fine, it stands up, but structurally, it's doomed to fail under the load it was promised to carry.
Okay.
Now, imagine that bridge isn't made of concrete and steel. Imagine it's the foundation for the health of nearly every person on the planet.
That is a terrifying image to start with. And, usually when we use metaphors like that, we're exaggerating for effect. But unfortunately, based on the stack of research we have in front of us today, it's not just a metaphor. It appears to be the literal reality of our nutritional guidelines.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are unpacking something that, honestly, I struggled to wrap my head around when I first read through these sources. We are talking about vitamin D.
Right.
But I want to be clear right off the bat, we aren't talking about eat more fortified cereal or get 10 minutes of sun.
No, this goes way deeper.
We are talking about a statistical bombshell, a math error, a literal calculation mistake. That might mean the entire world has been kept chronically deficient in a vital nutrient for years.
It sounds like internet hyperbole, doesn't it?
It totally does.
One weird trick doctors hate. But when you dig into the papers, specifically the reanalysis that surfaced around 2014 by researchers like Forgelers and Aquaru, the claim is incredibly specific
And
mathematically rigorous. The official government recommendation for vitamin D, the RDA, that's printed on every supplement bottle in your cabinet might be off not by a small margin, but by a factor of 15 to 22 times.
Okay, stop right there. 15 to 22 times.
Yes.
That is not a rounding error. That isn't, oops, we missed a decimal.
Not even close.
That is a different universe. I mean, if my mortgage payment was off by a factor of 20, I'd be living in a cardboard box or a palace. There's no in between.
Precisely. And that scale is what makes this so hard to believe at first glance. We assume these numbers, 600 IU, 400 IU, are etched in stone, derived from decades of flawless science.
Right.
But the mission of this deep dive is to deconstruct that assumption. We need to understand two things. First, the how.
Okay.
How does a body like the Institute of Medicine, now called the National Academy of Medicine, make a mistake that big?
We're going to get into the stat.
We're going to get into the actual statistics of it. And second, and perhaps more disturbingly, why hasn't it been fixed?
That is the question that really stuck with me, and I want to push on that later. Because if this error was identified in a peer-reviewed paper in 2014,
Right, over a decade ago.
Why is the bottle in my cabinet still telling me to take a dose that these sources say is scientifically useless? Is this just bureaucracy moving at the speed of a glacier, or is there something else going on?
That is where the sources get very provocative. They explicitly ask if there is a systemic error at play here.
A systemic error.
They raise the very uncomfortable question of whether higher minds or institutional powers are ignoring this data to protect specific industry interests.
And we are going to get into that because the sources bring some heavy receipts regarding the history of the Institute of Medicine.
They do.
Stuff about Agent Orange and asbestos that I honestly didn't know. But before we get to the potential conspiracy, we have to respect the math.
Always.
We have to understand why the number is wrong, because if the math doesn't hold up, the conspiracy theory just falls apart. So let's unpack this average versus individual mistake.
Right. To understand the controversy, you have to understand the calculation. So let's get back to the beginning. The Institute of Medicine, or IOM, had a very noble goal.
Okay.
They wanted to set a recommended daily allowance, the RDA, for vitamin D. Their specific target was bone health.
Right, for rickets and things like that.
Exactly. They wanted a dose that would ensure 97.5% of the population achieved a healthy blood level of 50 nanomoles per liter. That's 50 nanomoles per liter.
Okay, let's pause and set the baseline. 50 nanomoles per liter, that's the target.
That's the magic number they were aiming for.
And they want to make sure almost everyone, 97.5% of us, hits that target. That sounds reasonable. That sounds like good public health policy.
The intention was excellent. The execution, according to the 2014 statistical reanalysis, was fundamentally flawed.
How so?
The source highlights that the IOM based their calculations on the averages of study groups,
Okay.
rather than the data from individual participants.
Okay, I need you to break that down. I took stats in college, but that was a long time ago. Why does using the average of a study group mess up the recommendation for an individual?
Think of it this way. Imagine you're tasked with buying shoes for an entire town.
Okay, the shoe analogy. I like it.
You want to make sure 97.5% of the people have shoes that fit. To do that correctly, you need to know the size of the biggest feet in town, right? You need to cover the outliers.
Right. If I only buy size 9s, because that's the average, the guys with size 13 feet are going to be walking barefoot, and the people with size 5s will be swimming in them.
Exactly. Now, imagine instead of measuring everyone's feet individually, you go to 10 different neighborhoods. You measure everyone in neighborhood A, and their average size is 9.
Okay.
Neighborhood B's average size is 8.5. Neighborhood C is 9.2.
So I have a list of averages.
Right. And then you average those averages. You might come up with a universal shoe size of 9.
But I've lost all the detail.
You've completely hidden the variability. Because you average the averages, you erase the existence of the people with size 13 feet or size 5 feet. In statistical terms, they underestimated the standard deviation.
Standard deviation, that's the measure of how spread out the data is, right? The bell curve?
Correct. In a normal distribution, or a bell curve, most people are in the middle. The RDA is supposed to cover the people in the middle plus the people at the far end of the curve. 2 standard deviations out.
For 97.5%.
Exactly. By averaging the study groups, the IOM essentially collapsed the bell curve. They calculated a dose that works for the average person in an average study, not the dose required for the actual person at the edge who needs the most help.
So in biology terms, we are all at different points on that curve, depending on our genetics, our weight, our absorption rates.
Absolutely.
My body might need way more vitamin D to hit that 50 normal level than yours does.
Precisely. And the IOM calculation assumed we were all much more similar than we actually are. The source material explains that this mistake smoothed out the variability so aggressively that it made it look like a much smaller dose would cover everyone.
It's a statistical illusion.
It is.
So let's look at the hard numbers. What did the IOM conclude based on this smooth math, and what does the corrected math actually say?
The IOM concluded that 600 international units, or IU, of vitamin D per day would get 97.5% of people to a blood level of 63 nmol.
Okay, so that's safely above the 53 nmol.
It would be, yes, that was the promise.
The promise is, take 600 IU and you are safe. You're above the line.
That was the claim. But here's the reality check from the reanalysis. When independent statisticians corrected the math to look at individuals essentially measuring everyone's feet instead of the neighborhood average,
Right.
they found that 600 IU does not get you to 63 normal.
Where does it get you?
It gets 97.5% of the population to a level of only 26.8 normal.
Whoa, wait, say that again?
26.8.
Let me do the math here. The target is 50. The IOM thought 600 IU would get us to 63. But the corrected math says it only guarantees a level of 26.8.
Yes.
But 26.8, that's not optimal, that's deficient, isn't it? What happens to a human body at 26.8?
It is explicitly considered deficient. At that level, you are looking at increased risk of rickets in children, osteomalacia in adults, which is basically soft bones,
Soft bones.
and a host of other issues. The source makes this crystal clear. The current recommendation of 600 IU guarantees failure for the vast majority of the population.
It guarantees it.
By following the guidelines, you are statistically likely to remain in the state of clinical deficiency.
That is staggering. We aren't talking about optimizing for peak athletic performance here.
No.
We are talking about the baseline for not having growth bones. They set a rule that was supposed to keep us safe, but because of a spreadsheet error regarding standard deviation, the rule actually keeps us sick.
That's the argument laid out in the source.
Yeah.
And this is where we have to pivot to the real number. Because if 600 IU is the broken number, the immediate question is, what is the fixed number? What do we actually need to take to hit that 50 drawn mole target?
This is the part that I had to read 3 times. I actually went and checked another source just to make sure this wasn't a typo in the document.
It's not a typo. according to that 2014 reanalysis referenced in our sources, to actually achieve that original goal.
The 97.5% at 50 drawn mole.
Getting 97.5% of people to that healthy blood level, the daily intake shouldn't be 600 IU. It needs to be 8,895 IU.
Great.
8,895 IU.
Yeah.
I just want to pause on that. In the U.S., the recommendation is 600.
Correct.
In the U.K., I think the source said it's even lower, like 400 IU.
It is.
And the math says we need nearly 9,000. That is a paradigm shift. That's not take an extra pill. That's take the whole bottle.
It is a massive discrepancy. And I can see the skepticism on your face, which is good. You should be skeptical.
I am.
9,000 IU sounds like a megadose.
Yeah.
It sounds unnatural. It does. It sounds like something a bodybuilder would inject in a locker room. Is there any context for that number? Does 8,895 IU exist in nature?
That is the perfect question.
Yeah.
And the answer is yes. In fact, it's easily achievable.
How?
If you are a light-skinned person, a lifeguard, let's say, sitting in the sun in a bathing suit for about 20 to 30 minutes at solar noon,
Okay.
your body will naturally produce between 10,000 and 20,000 IU of vitamin D.
Wait, really? Just 20 minutes?
Just 20 minutes of full-body exposure.
Oh.
So when the math says we need 8,895 IU, it isn't suggesting a synthetic toxic load.
No.
It is suggesting a dose that mimics a very brief period of natural sun exposure. The mega dose is actually just the biological norm for a species that evolved outdoors.
That completely flips the script. So 600 IU isn't the safe dose.
No.
It's a starvation ration. It's like eating one grain of rice and calling it a meal.
Exactly. And this starvation ration has consequences. We've been operating under the assumption that we are covered by our multivitamins or our glass of milk.
Right.
But if we are all walking around with levels closer to 26 than 50, what is happening to our bodies? What are we missing out on?
The sources provided a laundry list here. And wasn't just strong bones.
No. The original goal of the IOM was bone health, preventing fractures in the elderly, preventing rickets. The current low recommendations are failing even that basic objective.
Failing at their one job.
But the biological scope of vitamin D goes far beyond the skeleton. It's technically a pro-hormone, not just a vitamin.
Right. It affects gene expression. It's a master key for a lot of systems.
It really is. The sources highlight that vitamin D is vital for immune regulation.
Okay.
It's critical for muscle function. It impacts brain health, mood stabilization, cognitive function, and metabolic control.
And the sources didn't shy away from linking this deficiency to the big killers.
No, they did not. They explicitly link higher vitamin D levels you generally cannot reach, with 600 IU to the prevention of various cancers, diabetes, and heart disease. The suggestion is that by keeping the recommendation low, we aren't just risking broken bones, we are leaving the door open for chronic, life-threatening conditions.
And it's not just about the math, is it? It's about the context of the modern world. One of the sources had this great phrase: "We live in an indoor, inflamed, sugar-fed society."
That is a crucial piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
We evolved spending our days in the sun. Our skin is a solar panel designed to manufacture this nutrient in massive quantity.
Oh.
But now we work in cubicles. We drive in cars with UV-blocking windows. We wear clothes. We wear sunscreen because we're terrified of skin cancer.
Rightly so.
And as a result, we have biologically disconnected ourselves from our primary source of power.
So we have a double whammy. We have a lifestyle that guarantees deficiency because we hide from the sun. And we have an official government guideline that is mathematically broken, telling us to take a supplement dose that is 20 times too small to make up for it.
Exactly. It creates a perfect storm for widespread global deficiency. And the result is a population that is chronically underfueled at a cellular level.
Which brings us to the elephant in the room, the question that has been nagging me since we started.
Let's get into it.
This error, this calculation mistake regarding standard deviation, was found in 2014. Independent research has confirmed the 8,895 IU figure. The math isn't really in dispute by the statisticians, so why is the official number still 600?
This is where we move from statistics to institutional analysis. And I want to be careful here, but the sources we have today are quite critical of the powers that be.
Critical is putting it politely. One source says this error has been completely ignored. It suggests that this isn't just an accident anymore.
Right.
It's a choice. But I have to play devil's advocate here. Is it really a choice, or is it just that government bodies are incredibly slow?
That's a fair question.
I mean, it takes them 10 years to fix a pothole. Maybe it takes 20 to fix a vitamin recommendation.
That is a fair point. Bureaucracy is notoriously sluggish. But the sources argue that this goes beyond sluggishness. To understand why, we have to look at the organization behind the numbers.
The Institute of Medicine?
The Institute of Medicine, now the National Academy of Medicine. It's important to note, as the source does, that this is a private, non-governmental organization. It advises the government, but it operates with a degree of independence.
Okay, and the source material explicitly suggests that this organization prioritizes protecting the system and industry over discovering the truth.
That is a heavy accusation.
It is. Do they back that up with anything, or is this just tinfoil hat territory?
They do back it up. The source cites historical precedents to establish a pattern of behavior. They argue that this isn't the first time the IOM has been on the wrong side of history regarding public health versus industry interests.
What examples did they give? Because if you're going to accuse a major health body of malfeasance, you need proof.
The most damning example they point to is the Agent Orange controversy.
Right, the defoliant used in Vietnam.
Exactly. For years, Vietnam veterans were suffering from rare cancers, birth defects in their children, severe skin conditions. They claimed it was the dioxin in Agent Orange.
So the government turned to the IOM.
They did. They tasked the IOM to review the evidence.
And what did the IOM say?
For a very long time, the IOM reports concluded there was insufficient evidence to link Agent Orange to these health outcomes.
Insufficient evidence.
That phrase. This delay effectively blocked veterans from receiving compensation and care. It wasn't until much later, after immense pressure and independent reviews, that the connection was undeniably acknowledged.
So the source's argument is this was a delaying tactic.
A delaying tactic to protect the government and the chemical companies from massive liability.
So the narrative here is, we delayed admitting Agent Orange was toxic to protect the budget and the contractors. And the source mentions asbestos too.
Yes. Specifically, the controversy surrounding asbestos in baby powder. For decades, there were internal concerns and external reports about asbestos contamination in talc, which is linked to ovarian cancer and mesothelioma.
Another insufficient evidence situation.
The source suggests that regulatory bodies and advisory groups, including the IOM, drag their feet on acknowledging this link, again, seemingly to protect the industry from a massive class action nightmare.
And silicone breast implants was the third one, right?
Yeah, correct. Similar pattern. Allegations of delaying or manipulating information to downplay risks. The argument the source builds is that this organization has a systemic error in its DNA.
Meaning?
It tends to favor the status quo. It tends to require an impossibly high burden of proof to change a guideline, especially if that change would disrupt a major industry.
Okay, so let's apply that systemic error to vitamin D. Admitting you were wrong about Agent Orange saves money on veteran benefits.
Right.
Admitting you were wrong about asbestos protects Johnson & Johnson. But vitamin D, it's a cheap vitamin. Who loses money if they admit they did the math wrong?
This is where we have to follow the money, as the source suggests. And this brings us to the big pharma angle.
I knew we were going there.
We have to. The source posits a provocative question. If the solution to immune regulation, mood stabilization, and reducing the risk of cancer and heart disease is a cheap, non-patentable vitamin?
Who loses out?
Exactly.
Well, let's think about it. If I'm taking 9,000 IU of vitamin D and suddenly my blood pressure normalizes, my insulin sensitivity improves, and my immune system kills off early cancer cells, I'm not going to the doctor. I'm not buying statins. I'm not buying insulin. I'm not undergoing chemotherapy.
That is the core of the argument. The source frames the IOM as a gatekeeper that maintains a specific medical model, the disease care model.
Right, not healthcare, disease care.
If the population is deficient in vitamin D, the data suggests they are more prone to a host of expensive chronic diseases.
Diabetes, heart disease, autoimmune disorders. These are the cash cows of the pharmaceutical industry. These are conditions you don't cure. You manage them for decades with expensive bills.
Precisely. Correcting the RDA from 600 IU to nearly 9,000 IU could essentially act as a massive population-wide preventative measure.
Which would be terrible for business.
The source suggests that this would disrupt the system.
Yeah.
It argues that there is no financial incentive for the medical industrial complex to cure deficiency if that deficiency drives the demand for pharmaceutical intervention.
It's the classic cures don't pay, treatments do argument. But seeing it applied to something as basic as a vitamin is chilling.
It is.
The idea is that they aren't hiding a cure for cancer in a vault. They are just hiding the math that keeps your own body from fighting it.
And remember, we are reporting on what the sources contend. We can't say for sure there is a smoking gun email where they say keep the vitamin D low.
Of course.
But when you look at the delay from 2014 to 2026, with no movement despite this statistical proof, it does force you to ask, if it's not incompetence, what is it?
Higher minds hiding the truth, as the source put it. It really makes you question who these guidelines are actually designed for. Are they designed for my biology or for the economy of the healthcare system?
It's a question that every listener needs to sit with. But even if you accept the math and even if you suspect the motive, there is still a massive hurdle to actually taking action.
Fear.
Exactly, fear.
Because if I go home today and tell my partner, hey, I heard on this deep dive we should take 9,000 IU of vitamin D, they are going to look at me like I'm crazy.
They probably will.
We've been conditioned to think vitamin D is dangerous in high doses. I've heard it my whole life. Be careful. It's fat soluble. It builds up. It's toxic. If I start taking 15 times the recommended dose, am I going to poison myself?
This is one of the most persistent myths the sources aim to dismantle. They argue that the fear of toxicity is vastly overblown compared to the reality of the deficiency.
So debunk it for us. What does the data say about toxicity? At what point does it actually get dangerous?
According to the source, true vitamin D toxicity is extremely rare. We were talking about cases where people took hundreds of thousands of international units daily.
Hundreds of thousands.
For months on end, not just a one-time thing.
So taking 8,000 or 10,000 is nowhere near that danger zone.
Not even in the same ballpark. You have a massive buffer. The source emphasizes that our fear is misplaced. We are terrified of a rare toxicity event that requires massive abuse of supplements.
Right.
While we completely ignore the widespread guaranteed damage of deficiency caused by the 600 IU guideline.
That's a great way to put it. We are scared of the lightning strike, so we stand in the flooding river.
That's a very apt analogy. However, and this is a big, however, biology is complex.
Okay.
You can't just start popping 10,000 IU pills without understanding how vitamin D interacts with other nutrients.
I was going to ask about that.
If you do that, you might run into problems not because of toxicity, but because of imbalance.
Okay, this is the how-to section. I feel like this is crucial.
Yeah.
If we are going to up our dose, how do we do it safely? What acts as the safety mechanism?
The primary concern with high vitamin D intake is calcium. Vitamin D increases your body's ability to absorb calcium from food. That's a good thing for your bones. But if you have too much calcium floating around in your blood and nowhere to put it, it can end up in the wrong places.
Like kidney stones or calcified arteries.
Exactly. You do not want calcium plaque in your heart valves or your arteries. This is where the source highlights the absolute necessity of vitamin K2.
Vitamin K2. I've heard of this, but explain what it actually does.
Think of vitamin D as the gatekeeper. It opens the door and lets calcium into the nightclub of your body.
Okay, calcium's in the club.
But once the calcium is inside, it's just wandering around drunk, it doesn't know where to go. Vitamin K2 is the bouncer, or better yet, the traffic cop.
I like that.
It activates a protein called matrix GLA protein, which physically grabs the calcium and directs it into the bone and keeps it out of the soft tissues.
That is a great visual. So vitamin D gets the calcium in and K2 puts the calcium away.
Correct. If you take high D without K2, you risk calcium buildup in your arteries. If you take them together, you get stronger bones and clean arteries. It's non-negotiable if you're doing high doses.
Non-negotiable. Got it. So D3 needs K2. Is that it? Or is there another player?
There's one more critical player, magnesium.
Magnesium. Why is that one important?
Because vitamin D isn't biologically active when you swallow it. It has to be converted by your liver and your kidneys into the active form, calcitriol.
Okay.
That conversion process is enzymatic, and those enzymes are magnesium dependent.
So every time I take vitamin D, my body uses up magnesium to process it.
Yes. And here's the thing. Most people are already deficient in magnesium because our soil is depleted.
Right.
So if you start taking 10,000 IU of vitamin D, you're revving up that conversion engine. You will burn through your magnesium stores very quickly. If you don't replenish them, you might get symptoms like heart palpitations, cramps, or anxiety.
And then people blame the vitamin D.
Exactly.
They say, oh, the vitamin D gave me palpitations.
But it wasn't the vitamin D toxicity. It was an induced magnesium deficiency.
So it's a triad. It's a team sport.
It is.
You can't just throw the quarterback on the field alone. You need the vitamin D to gather the calcium, the K2 to direct the calcium, and the magnesium to power the whole factory.
Precisely. And interestingly, the source adds one more simple thing. Water.
Water.
Yes. Increasing hydration helps your kidneys flush out any excess calcium and keeps the whole system flowing. It's a simple safety measure.
So let's summarize the actionable advice from the text. If I want to fix this deficiency, what is the hierarchy of solutions?
The number one recommendation, the gold standard, is non-pharmaceutical. Get more sun exposure.
Back to the lifeguard.
Yes. That is the biological default. Your body has built-in feedback loops to prevent toxicity from the sun. You can't overdose on sunshine in the same way you can on pills.
How does that work?
Your skin just stops making vitamin D when you have enough. It actually starts to degrade the excess. It's a perfect self-regulating system.
But I live in Seattle, or London, or it's the middle of winter.
Then the secondary recommendation applies. Vitamin D3 supplementation, but not 600 IU. You want to aim for that higher tier to reach blood levels of 50 R-mol, which likely means thousands of IUs, not hundreds.
But crucially,
It must be paired with vitamin K2 and magnesium to be safe and effective.
it feels like we've uncovered a secret that shouldn't be a secret. It feels like we found a manual for the human body that got lost in the mail.
It really does. And it's empowering because it's a relatively simple fix for a very complex set of problems.
So let's bring this deep dive home. We've covered a lot of ground. We started with a simple math error.
A statistical mix-up between averages and individuals.
That happened years ago inside the Institute of Medicine.
We found that this error led to a recommendation of 600 IU a dose that, statistically speaking, leaves nearly everyone deficient.
We looked at the corrected math, verified by independent researchers, which suggests we need closer to 8,895 IU to actually thrive and protect our bodies from serious disease.
A number that, importantly, aligns with natural sun exposure.
And we explored the disturbing possibility raised by the sources that this information has been suppressed or ignored by an organization with a documented history of protecting industry interests over public health.
From Agent Orange to asbestos.
It leaves us with a massive disconnect. On one side, we have the science saying, take more, be healthier, prevent cancer, protect your bones. On the other side, we have the official guidelines saying, take less, stay deficient, and maybe buy more meds later.
It connects back to that final provocative thought from the source. If the calculation for 8,895 IU has been confirmed, and the benefits cover everything from brain health to metabolic control, who actually benefits from keeping the official recommendation artificially low?
Is it just bureaucratic inertia? Is it just that it's hard to reprint all the textbooks?
Right.
Or is it, as the source suggests, a protection of the medical industrial complex? If we were all sufficient in vitamin D and we cut the rates of diabetes and heart disease by even 20%, how much of the healthcare industry would simply vanish?
That is the multi-billion-dollar question. And the source implies the answer is too much to let it happen.
And unfortunately, we can't wait for the government to answer it for us. The takeaway here is that you have to take ownership. You can't outsource your health to a guideline that might be off by a factor of 20.
No, you can't.
Look at the numbers, look at the sources, and maybe, just maybe, go get your blood levels tested.
Critical thinking is the only prescription we can trust. And a little bit of sunshine doesn't hurt either.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been an eye-opener. We'll catch you on the next one.
Stay curious.